He was enjoying a life most people can only imagine.
He won $20 million in the lottery. It was like an American dream to me.
But that dream turned into a nightmare.
911, what's your emergency?
We have a homicide.
Did cold, hard cash lead to cold-blooded murder?
Money can put a target on you.
He was known to carry large amounts of cash.
If it wasn't for the money, he'd probably still be here.
Or does money mask a scandalous secret?
This story reads like a Greek tragedy.
But I knew what was going to happen.
They got him to the house, tricked him to come.
It was a trap.
He's screaming, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him.
My heart. And now it was blood just pushing out.
It's around 8 o'clock on the evening of July 26, 2005, and the long summer twilight is starting to fade over the small town of Seffner, Florida.
Seffner is to the east of Tampa, a small working class community. It's still a little bit rural.
It's a neighborhood like many others, just a quiet neighborhood.
But on this night, as local resident Curtis Jenkins cleans up after dinner, he looks out his kitchen window and is surprised to see a van speed onto his narrow residential street and come to a stop just outside his house.
It was just kind of unusual because it was a dead-end street.
Curtis is even more surprised when 3 people suddenly pile out.
They just go running out the vehicle in this small-town community. It was just something unusual.
Concerned, Curtis steps out onto his porch.
Hey, what are you all doing down there?
It's okay, we just ran out of gas.
He knew that wasn't true because the car's still running.
He goes back and, finds a neighbor and asks him to come with him to go look in this van and kind of check it out.
He wanted someone to be there with him in case something happened.
As rain begins to fall, Curtis and his neighbor James Ruffalo reach the van and find it difficult to tell what's inside.
I remember him peeking through the windows. They were pretty dark.
Is it unlocked? Think I should? Go. Just be careful.
Despite their caution, there's little that can prepare Curtis for the gruesome scene that waits inside.
Call 911. There was blood in the van.
There's a man lying face down in the van with his hands tied.
You could see a hole in the back of his head, which was obviously a gunshot wound.
A van has been abandoned here, and there is a dead body in the car.
Chicago native Jeffrey Dampier came from modest means.
He knew what it was like to grow up poor and not to have anything.
But Jeffrey was always rich in other ways.
He said he had a really good childhood. And his parents are still together.
With his parents' love and support, Jeffrey had big plans for his future.
He always had dreams of owning a business one day.
After high school, Jeffrey was unable to afford college, but was still determined to get ahead.
He went to the military, to the Army, right after high school.
He ended up becoming a mechanic.
Along the way, Jeffrey had a few short-lived relationships. Though they didn't last long, they did give him 2 beautiful sons.
And he was a devoted father. He always supported the children.
After his discharge from the Army, Jeffrey enrolled in a local community college, where he met fellow student Deborah Jackson.
We had to take some basic classes, some math and reading before we can get into our field of study. And I was having a little difficulty in math. And every time the teacher would call on me, he'll shout the answer out because he knew I was having difficulty with it. And he saw me struggling with it a lot. And so he would always cover for me.
No, but seriously, where have you been?
I went home, but now I'm back, so.
Okay, well, since you missed class, me being the good friend that I am, I took some notes for you.
Did not.
Soon, Jeffrey was helping the single mother of 4 after class, too.
Jeffrey asked me, can he drive me home? Because I used to take the train and the bus to get home from the school. And then he started tutoring me a little bit in math. And then he took me out to dinner. And then one thing led to another one. They ultimately got married. I had 4 kids, and Jeffrey had 2. 3 years later, we ended up having 1 together. So total it was 7 kids we raised together.
Though with so many mouths to feed, Jeffrey had to put his dreams on hold.
They were just doing the best they can to help support this family. He became a security guard. In that way, we won't have to worry about somebody babysitting the kids. But see, I worked mornings, he worked afternoons.
Money was often tight, But in 1996, an unbelievable stroke of luck would change Deborah and Jeffrey's lives forever.
They bought a scratch-off ticket and they won $20 million in the lottery.
Our life took a whole drastic change after that.
After winning the lottery, Jeffrey lived a good life. He spent lavishly on himself and his wife.
We moved way out in the south suburbs. The kids went to really good schools, and the money gave us the opportunity to travel and go places that we never thought we'd be able to go.
He bought houses and cars for his parents and his siblings. He took some 38 people of his extended family on a cruise. He also gave back to his community through his church, and he helped people in need.
He was just very generous with this money.
But becoming a millionaire overnight had a hidden cost.
Jeffrey head got really big. A lot of places we would go, if people didn't serve us right or talk to us, he would throw that out there. You don't know who I am. I could buy this place. When you come into money, you don't have to be so vocal with it. Everybody don't need to know.
Jeffrey's newly inflated ego wasn't the only sore spot in his and Deborah's marriage.
Jeff decided to have an extramarital affair.
4 years younger than Jeffrey, Katrina Jackson was a single mom struggling to raise 2 kids of her own.
He met her and wanted to help her, and one thing led to another.
Soon, Jeffrey and Katrina were embroiled in a passionate affair.
I found out about it, and I confronted him about it. And Jeffrey he packed his clothes, and I told him, if you leave, I'm not taking you back. I'm not coming to get you. I'm not gonna do any of those things because we're married, and I decided I'm gonna put my foot down. If you walk out this door, you're not gonna never come back.
In 2001, Jeffrey and Deborah officially divorced.
It was an amicable split.
He took half of the money and I had half.
Once the ink was dry on his divorce, Jeffrey married Katrina Jackson.
They were totally taken with each other, very happy.
Shortly after tying the knot, Jeffrey and Katrina decided to make a fresh start and left the Windy City for the Sunshine State.
And within a couple of years, they ended up moving down to Florida, here in the Tampa area.
Katrina's younger sisters, Terry and Victoria Jackson, soon joined them in Tampa.
Jeffrey is providing a very comfortable life for not only his wife, but also her 2 younger sisters.
Though youngest sister Victoria faced problems that money couldn't solve.
At the age of 15, Victoria found her father dead in the garage.
He had hung himself and killed himself, and she's the one who located him. So there were definitely issues.
Having gone through this traumatic event in her life at an early young age, she started using drugs, and she was going down a really, really bad path, hanging around the wrong crowd.
Jeffrey saw the move to Florida as a chance for Victoria to make a fresh start and get her life back on the right track.
He was stepping in as being that, father figure.
He assisted her with all her bills and giving her a place to live.
Vicky, did you end up getting that class registered?
I did. I got it all squared away, and I got into that accounting class. That's
There
good.
you go. That's what I'm saying. You a natural.
He's provided for Victoria to go into school. He's provided work for Terry.
Jeffrey's wealth not only allowed him to support Katrina and her sisters, it enabled him to fulfill his lifelong dream.
He opens up a Chicago-style popcorn store.
When we was in Chicago, probably every Sunday, that would be our Sunday adventure, was to go downtown to get on the train or just take a drive down and get popcorn from Garrett Popcorn. It has like the best cheese, caramel popcorn. You could buy the caramel with the pecans on it. It's really big in Chicago.
Jeffrey's popcorn became a hit in Tampa, too.
It was in our Channelside district, which is a vibrant location, a lot of nightlife.
The business is doing really well.
Successful business owner, lottery winner, happy husband and father. It seemed like Jeffrey Dampier had it all.
Jeffrey has realized his lifelong dream. He's providing for his family. Everything is going well and great in his life.
But on the night of July 26, 2005, 9 years after a scratch-off ticket changed his life, it appears Jeffrey's extraordinary luck has suddenly run out.
Neighbors found the abandoned van with Jeffrey inside it, his hands tied with shoestring, blunt force trauma to his head, and a single gunshot wound.
When police arrive, they run the plates on the van.
It comes back to Mr. Jeffrey Dampier.
When you looked at the photograph that he had on his driver's license and compared it to the male that was in the van, we were pretty certain it was Jeffrey Dampier.
The address on Jeffrey's driver's license also places him pretty far from home.
He lived 14 miles away in Fishhawk. What is he doing way out here and in this condition?
Homicide detectives from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office are summoned to the scene. As they survey the carnage, they have no idea this is just the first step in a twisted investigation that will ultimately prove true that time-tested adage, more money, more problems.
This was a targeted attack.
Nearly a decade after winning the lottery, multi-millionaire Jeffrey Dampier was living his dreams in the suburbs of Tampa, Florida.
But it was a good place to, get a fresh start and move from the hustle and bustle of Chicago down to sunny Florida and kind of start this new life.
He bought a beautiful home, launched a successful business, and was able to support his family.
But on July 26, 2005, Jeffrey's winning streak comes to a sudden end.
Jeffrey Dampier was found deceased inside a conversion van in the Seffner area of Hillsborough County. He had been shot in the back of the head.
They called me and said, they found Jeffrey. They said somebody killed him, he'd been shot. I was like, what?
At the scene, detectives quickly determined the van is the scene of the crime.
There was a lot of blood and blood spatter on the side of the seat.
A shell casing was in the van.
I believe it was a 9mm.
But why would someone shoot Jeffrey? The condition of his body offers detectives what appears to be a crucial clue.
They found Jeffrey with his hands tied with shoestring. Their concerns and thoughts immediately go to a robbery and a kidnapping.
Definitely an indication the person was taken against his will.
Desperate to learn more, detectives turned to the neighbors who'd called 911.
How'd you first notice the van?
It come screeching to a halt and kind of caught my attention.
He described 3 people that he had seen running from the van.
3 African Americans.
Did you see anything else?
One of them was definitely a woman. I know this because I spoke to her.
He engaged, had a conversation with them, and they told them that they ran out of gas.
Acting on this new information, detectives order a massive search of the area.
Obviously, the sheriff's department would send that information out to deputies in the streets to try to see if there's anyone in that vicinity that matches that description.
There's units being dispatched all over the place looking for any persons that could be walking. You're gonna have your aviation unit that's gonna be up and shining light, attacking that area fast and hard.
While the manhunt unfolds, detectives head off to question Jeffrey's widow, Katrina.
Considering the witness identified one of the suspects as a young African-American female, they don't know if Katrina's even home.
Though when detectives knock, it's Katrina who answers.
Mrs. Dampier?
Yes?
We're here from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. Your husband Jeffrey's van was found abandoned outside of Seffner early this evening.
They don't tell her anything about Jeffrey being dead.
Is everything okay?
That's what we're trying to figure out, man.
We have to get as much information from her as we can without showing our hands initially too much.
Do you know where your husband is now?
No, I was actually starting to worry.
His wife had actually had plans to meet Jeffrey for dinner that evening.
She knew that he had closed the store and then he was on his way there, and that was the last she knew.
He never showed up and he's not answering his phone.
She had made it clear that she had been trying to get a hold of him.
But is this the truth or a cover story?
They're really trying to gauge her reaction. Obviously, law enforcement, they're trained in trying to, detect deceit or lies.
It is a delicate balance because if she's a true victim of his murder and she lost her husband, the last thing that needs to be done is her to be treated any differently than a true victim. And at that point, it's time to tell her that there's an incident that occurred.
I'm afraid we have some bad news about your husband.
When detectives finally tell Katrina that Jeffrey is dead, her reaction isn't what she would expect.
She wasn't super emotional. It wasn't screaming and crying or anything.
Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to harm your husband?
She didn't know of anybody who would want to do this to him.
How would you describe your relationship with your husband?
It's good. Was good.
She describes a relationship with Jeffrey, a loving relationship, that they were both faithful to each other.
But what Katrina says next raises a red flag with detectives.
Do you think this had anything to do with the lottery money?
She tells them Jeffrey had won millions in the lottery a few years earlier.
According to Katrina, he wasn't shy about it either.
He carried around too much cash, but he wasn't afraid if anybody watched him.
While Katrina seems to point the finger at a random robber, detectives can't help but think she's the one with the most to gain from Jeffrey's death.
$10 million is a huge motive for murder. And with that kind of money at stake, she could have easily hired the 3 people in the van.
So far, there's nothing connecting her to the crime, but there's nothing ruling her out either.
There's all kinds of different scenarios that we face in those type of investigations, and it could have been easily that his wife was involved.
There's nobody that can corroborate her account of the evening.
As detectives are concluding their interview with Katrina, a sheriff's deputy 14 miles away in Seffner spots a young woman walking along the roadside not far from the crime scene.
They believe that she may have been one of the subjects who actually ran from the van as she fit the general description.
The deputy pulls to the side of the road in order to speak to the young woman.
She's asked for an explanation of why she's out on a Tuesday night just wandering the streets.
She tells them that she had gotten into a fight with her girlfriend, and she was just out walking around.
Just waiting for her to calm down before I go back.
She's, disheveled. She's kind of despondent.
You need a police report or anything?
No.
Anybody we can call for you? Any place we can take you?
You can call my sister, Katrina Dampier.
That's when the woman identifies herself as Terry Jackson, Katrina Dampier's younger sister.
It turns out that her sister is Jeffrey Dampier's wife.
Ma'am, may you step forward this way?
Why would Katrina's sister be found just a mile away from the crime scene?
Barely an hour after finding lottery winner Jeffrey Dampier shot to death, Hillsborough County, Florida sheriff's deputies have just stopped to question a young woman walking down the street near the crime scene.
They determined that it was Terry Jackson, who was the sister-in-law of Jeffrey, the victim.
This is a bombshell discovery for law enforcement.
Detectives are already interviewing Jeffrey's wife, Katrina, and now officers have found her sister Terry wandering around near the murder scene. There's almost no way it could be a coincidence.
Ma'am, may you step forward this way? We need to take you in for some questions. Just walk over here in front of this car, though. We want to make sure you ain't got any weapons.
They wanted to take her in for an interview.
As they pat Terry down, sheriff's deputies make another telling discovery.
When they empty out her pockets, there's a wad of bills, almost $2,400 worth.
Where did she get that money from?
It's very unusual to have $2,400 of cash just in your pocket on a Tuesday night.
The officers transport Terry to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office for questioning. Once detectives at the Dampier residence conclude their interview with Katrina, they head back to the station to take a run at Terry.
She had explained to the deputy that she just had a domestic incident with her significant other and was just upset and was trying to get away from that interaction.
But when they asked her how she'd ended up near the scene of her brother-in-law's murder, her story suddenly changes.
She said that she was kidnapped and she was a victim too.
According to Terry, the killer hadn't just kidnapped Jeffrey. He'd also kidnapped Terry and her younger sister, Victoria.
I tied up Jeff. He forced me and Vicky into the van.
Not only does Terry claim that she witnessed the murder, she says she can identify the killer.
According to Terry, the mastermind behind Jeffrey's murder is her sister Victoria's boyfriend, Trey Jackson.
He actually was her boyfriend back in Chicago. But Trey had a sketchy, shady kind of past and was known as a troublemaker.
He'd done time in jail, and he was a violent person.
He'd been affiliated with the gang.
In fact, Trey was one of the people Jeffrey and Katrina were trying to get Victoria away from when they moved her down to Florida.
Once she moved to Tampa, the relationship kind of went away.
Though a 1,000-mile separation couldn't keep the young lovers apart.
He had recently just moved down to Florida and started living with Victoria. Even though family and friends kind of warned Victoria to stay away, there was just something about Trey that just wouldn't let her do that.
According to Terry, Trey wasn't around when she'd gone over to Victoria's place earlier that evening.
Like a regular day, we come over and watch movies.
Terry explains that when she gets there, she thinks that they're just gonna hang out. But once she arrives, Victoria says she's gonna call Jeffrey, and she's gonna try to get Jeffrey to come over.
She asked Jeffrey to come over because she needed to get more money from him.
He paid her rent for her apartment. He took care of her.
Terry says that while there was nothing unusual about Victoria hitting Jeffrey up for cash, what her sister did next was strange.
Victoria tells her when Jeffrey's getting ready to come over for her to hide in the bedroom.
She found it very odd because, that was her brother-in-law.
Still, Terry says that she went into the bedroom as Victoria asked.
I sat down on the bed, on the edge of the bed.
Terry says she waited while Victoria and Jeffrey talked.
According to Terry, Victoria and Jeffrey had only been talking a few minutes when she heard a commotion.
Trey showed up and she heard everyone arguing.
When she comes out, she's shocked to see, Trey with the gun holding it to Jeffrey's head.
What's going on? What do you mean what's going on? You shut up. That's what's going on.
Terry explained that Trey and Victoria were trying to rob him.
Talking about what, huh?
Victoria!
Huh? Shut up!
Jeffrey was saying things along the lines of, don't shoot, I'll give you what you want.
Jeff is like, I can go to the bank. Trey like, fuck that, you ain't going to no bank. What you got in that safe?
Their initial plan was to go to his popcorn shop in Channelside to see if they can get him to open the safe and retrieve more money from there.
Terry says she looked on in horror while Victoria tied Jeffrey's hands with a shoestring.
And where did that shoestring come from?
Out of a boot. Out of my little sister's boots.
Then, according to Terry, Trey forced all of them into Jeffrey's van.
He was like, come on, we all finna go to the bed. He kept rushing Jeff, like, run, run, run. He was like, Vicky, you better get your ass in the car, get in the car, Ted. And I was, I don't want this, I don't want this. Why you doing this to him? He's like, get in the car. So I think.
She felt forced by gunpoint and threatened that she had to do what he said, otherwise she would be victimized as well.
He's like, if I let you out, I'm gonna shoot you. And I knew he meant what he said.
When they ultimately get into the van, Victoria is driving. Trey is sitting in the front passenger seat with a gun, and he's ordering Victoria to drive.
Terry says that at some point on their way to the popcorn shop, Trey was overcome with rage.
Terry says that Trey begins to pistol whip Jeffrey.
He was hitting him in the head with the pistol.
Terry was supposedly in the very back of the van, scared to death.
Uh-huh. That's right. There ain't gonna be nothing to say. There ain't gonna be nothing to say. Shut up! Shut up! You want some?
Sometime during the drive, they were on Interstate 75 heading northbound. Trey told her to pull over.
Trey switches seats with Victoria, and he gets in the driver's seat, and he gives the gun to Victoria, and he orders Victoria to hold the gun on Jeffrey's head. While Victoria has the gun on him, they're searching through his pockets to get more money.
At this point, Mr. Dampierre is not even a threat to anybody. He's bound, face down in his van.
Jeff down there like, man, I give you whatever you want. I get it. Just let me go. Trey said, fuck that shit. Vicky, shoot him.
Terry says that Trey is basically telling Victoria, do it, just shoot him, just do it.
Pull the trigger! I said pull the trigger! You pull the trigger on him!
He starts screaming at her to shoot him, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him. And he just keeps yelling it, and she pulls the trigger.
Victoria, you shot!
That's what hurt. And then when I looked back over the seat, it was blood just pushing out his head. The back of his head.
Judging from her emotional reaction, Terry is clearly rattled by what's transpired. Once she recovers her composure, Terry describes what happened next.
They go into this neighborhood, but it has a dead end. So the van stops, and Terry indicates that she jumps out the door and starts running.
He didn't even completely stop. I jumped out and I just started running.
Why did they turn down that street?
I don't know. He was driving.
Terry says that once she jumped out of the van, Trey and Victoria followed.
I looked back and it was a neighbor talking to my little sister. But Trey was trying to chase me, so I don't know what happened after that. I just winded up in a big circle.
Everything about Terry's story seems to fit with what detectives already know about the murder.
That doesn't mean detectives believe Terry is necessarily the innocent victim she claims to be.
Why didn't you tell the police when they stopped you on the side of the road?
She tried to say that she had just been out after having an argument with her girlfriend.
I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I'm being honest.
There's also the matter of the $2,400 Terry had in her possession when police initially detained her.
Where did that money come from?
From Vicky before Jeff even came over. I already had it in my pocket.
Even if Terry is telling the truth, there's one thing that detectives are still struggling to understand.
One of the things that we were concerned about is why Victoria and Trey had to kill Jeffrey.
Dampierre's paying for everything for her. He's living on this guy's dime.
Detectives can think of one possible answer: Victoria and Terry's sister, Katrina.
If Katrina's behind the murder, maybe that was the arrangement. Kill Jeffrey for her, and she'll make sure the money kept flowing.
But according to Terry, it wasn't money that sparked the attack on Jeffrey.
She reveals that Victoria and Jeffrey were actually having an affair.
Jeffrey was having an affair with your sister, Vicky?
Yes.
Hours after lottery winner Jeffrey Dampierre's brutal murder, his sister-in-law Terry Jackson has just revealed a shocking secret.
So Jeffrey was having an affair with your sister?
Yes.
This really takes detectives by surprise because not only is Jeffrey married to Terry's older sister, Katrina, he's also sleeping with her younger sister, Victoria.
Terry claims the affair had been going on for years. It had started before Jeffrey and Katrina were married, back when they were still dating.
She ended up saying that it had started many years before, when Victoria was even underage.
Despite the fact that the affair had allegedly been going on for years, Terry insists that her sister Katrina is completely unaware that her husband is sleeping with their baby sister Victoria.
Terry indicated that it was supposed to be a secret.
This is a deep, dark secret that no one in the family knew about.
Now that Jeffrey's dead, detectives wonder if that secret had finally gotten out, with deadly consequences for Jeffrey.
She could have had Jeffrey killed after learning that he had been having an affair with her sister.
However, detectives also realize that Katrina isn't the only one with the motive.
Terry says that Victoria's boyfriend, Trey Jackson, actually knew about the affair between Victoria and Jeffrey.
But Trey was basically pimping Vicky. She get money from Jeff and give it to her.
He wasn't, happy with it. He also didn't discourage it either. I mean, he was a beneficiary of it.
He essentially was living in an apartment that was being paid for by Jeffrey. So I think there was maybe some sort of male competition or feelings of jealousy from Trey towards Jeffrey.
So now detectives are wondering if Trey had cooked up the whole murder and kidnapping in order to get Jeffrey out of the way.
Terry is telling law enforcement his anger about this affair is coming out while this kidnapping is taking place. He's pistol whipping Jeffrey. He's cursing at him, calling him derogatory terms. He's referencing this affair between them.
As she tied him up, Trey steady saying, yeah, you think you slick, fucking two sisters. You married to one and you fucking my girl.
Terry's statement also leaves detectives wondering about Victoria's level of involvement.
Victoria called him up and invited him over to her place. She lured him there.
But does that mean she was manipulated by Trey, or had Victoria manipulated him? Could she be the one behind this whole plot as revenge on Jeffrey?
Finally, detectives aren't convinced that Terry's the innocent bystander she's made herself out to be.
Was she more involved than what she indicated? It definitely appears that way.
There are a lot of questions, so they're trying to figure out, is what Terry is telling them the truth? But really, more importantly, they know they need to find Trey and Victoria.
Detectives start with the apartment where the kidnapping supposedly took place.
They may have been thinking about going back to the apartments. The apartment was empty.
With Trey and Victoria still at large, the search expands across southern Florida.
We had some local addresses that we started to check with patrol personnel, and we put out alerts to surrounding agencies.
And since they're suspected of killing a well-known local businessman and millionaire lottery winner, the local media soon picks up the story.
We had their pictures, pretty much plastered all of the news networks and online. It was blasted throughout the state of Florida.
In the meantime, Terry Jackson continues to cooperate with the investigation.
In addition to all the information she's already given, Terry also gives law enforcement information about where they could find the murder weapon.
Terry tells the law enforcement officers that when they're leaving, she hears like a clink and believes that Trey has thrown the gun away.
We actually physically took her out there because there's some heavily wooded areas, kind of marshy areas that can be in there, and walk her physically through, and sure enough, we located the gun.
We found a Glock 9mm handgun, which was thrown into a field near the crime scene. This field is the same location where Terry Jackson gave us the information where it could be.
It's the same caliber as the shell casing found in the back of the van, but it would take ballistics testing to confirm that it's a murder weapon.
While a ballistics team processes the Glock 9mm, detectives sit down with Jeffrey's widow, Katrina Dampier, for a follow-up interview.
Anytime we have this kind of case, anybody who's close to that person could be a suspect. Jeffrey's wife, right off the bat, Kay, maybe she is involved.
Detectives start by broaching the subject of her husband's alleged affair with her youngest sister.
Oh. No.
Katrina breaks down so completely that detectives are convinced that her reaction is genuine.
Jeffrey's wife had no clue that there was actually a relationship going on behind her back.
Further questioning convinces detectives that Katrina was completely unaware of the plot to kidnap her husband.
They subpoena her phone records, and it does check out that she had been trying to call Jeffrey throughout the night.
They never uncover any communication between her and her sisters that would suggest that she'd orchestrated anything.
While detectives have ruled out Katrina Dampier as a suspect in her husband's murder, another day passes before authorities get their first lead on Trey and Victoria's whereabouts.
A family member from Jacksonville contacted police and essentially told them that they were a cousin and that they knew that Trey would be coming to their house.
Trey wanted to get a car and actually purchase a car from this relative to get out of town.
Tipped off by Trey's cousin, authorities swing into action.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office set up surveillance at Trey's cousin's house.
Sheriff's Department, don't move. Hands up, where we can see them.
It's been 2 days since Tampa area businessman Jeffrey Dampier's murder, and authorities have just cornered their prime suspects. Jeffrey's sister-in-law, Victoria Jackson, and her boyfriend, Trey Jackson.
Trey's cousin had contacted police in Jacksonville and told them that Trey was coming to his house looking to purchase a car.
So at that point, law enforcement coordinates with this cousin so that they can apprehend Trey and Victoria when they make it to the cousin's house.
Bree, show me your hands. Turn around, face the car.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office were able to take them into custody without incident.
A quick search determines that Trey is unarmed, but not empty-handed.
When the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took Trey into custody, they did find about $2,000 in cash in his pocket. In this cash, there were several bloodstains.
Jacksonville police coordinate with authorities in Tampa, and that afternoon, both Trey and Victoria are extradited back to Hillsborough County for questioning.
And we flew up there to interview them once they were arrested.
They had Trey in one separate secure interview room, and Victoria was in a separate secure interview room.
Detectives talked to Victoria first.
If she did indeed shoot him, she's gonna have some type of remorse. She didn't fit the bill to be a cold-blooded killer.
Ms. Jackson, let me start by saying, how do you know Jeffrey Dampier?
My sister's husband, and me and him had a relationship going on the side.
While Victoria admits to the affair, she denies having anything to do with Jeffrey's murder.
Victoria claimed that Jeffrey had come over and that they had talked inside Jeffrey's van, and then Jeffrey left, and Victoria went back into the house.
He was on his way back to the store.
Okay.
And after that, I didn't talk to him.
When detectives reveal that Terry has already told them everything, Victoria's story and her demeanor suddenly change.
She put her head down and began to cry and began to admit actually what had occurred.
Victoria starts to tell the detectives what I believe to be the true story of her calling Jeffrey and essentially luring him to the apartment so that he can be robbed.
Did you plan on robbing him?
I didn't plan on it, but I knew what was going to happen.
Okay. Were you forced to do it, or were you just kind of went along with it?
It was forced.
You were forced? And who is it that forced you?
Trey.
Victoria's story is pretty consistent with Terry's story.
However, the interview does reveal one glaring discrepancy between Terry's account and that of Victoria.
When Jeff knocks on the door, where is Trey at?
He in the bedroom with my sister.
According to Victoria, Terry is no innocent bystander. Instead, she had been a willing accomplice.
She's basically saying is that it was Terry and Trey who were the actual people who were planning this.
She said that Trey and Terry wanted to rob Jeffrey of his money.
And Victoria says that she was bait for the trap.
Hey.
Baby girl. So, where Trey at?
He won't be back for a while.
Oh, good. Good.
Trey and my sister come out the room. My sister got a knife, and Trey had the gun, and they told him not to move.
At this point, they removed money out of his pocket.
He's like, "That's all the money I got on me."
Did you see him take it out of the pocket?
No, my sister took it out of his pocket.
Do you know how much money it was?
No.
Victoria also claims that it was Terry who tied up Jeffrey, not her.
Do you know what she tied him up with?
No, I wasn't looking, paying attention.
Victoria was asked to go get his van. She went out to the parking lot, went and got the van, and pulled it closer to the front door of her apartment. As she pulled up, she said that Trey and Terry were walking Jeffrey towards the van, and they were on either side of him and pushed him into the passenger side of the van. They forced him to lay face down in between the seats, same as he was found when he was found deceased.
When asked how Jeffrey ended up dead, Victoria and Terry's stories suddenly converge.
He had me the gun. He told me, "Vicky, do it. Vicky, sure."
Say that again?
"Vicky, do it. Sure."
She admits that she shoots Jeffrey.
I just closed my eyes and turned my head and pulled the trigger.
He was over her, telling her to do it, but ultimately it was her finger. She pulled the trigger and killed the man she'd been having an affair with.
This was not something that, Victoria wanted to do. She said they really had plans to get married and have a future with each other.
Did y'all get engaged at some point?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
Last year.
Last year? Okay. And did he buy you a ring?
Yes.
Did you love Jeff?
Yeah.
But according to Victoria, she feared Trey more.
I pressed her why did she shoot him, why she kept following the orders of Trey throughout this whole robbery. She just said that she was scared of Trey and he had battered her in the past.
Did he threaten to kill you?
Yeah.
Victoria was really trying to emphasize to law enforcement that, she really had no choice in this matter. There was no reason for her to want to have Jeffrey killed or want to do him any harm because they loved each other.
Is there anything that you else would like to say?
Just want to apologize to my family and his, especially my sister and my little nephews.
Are you remorseful about what happened?
Yeah.
She was very emotional. Towards the end of the interview,
She's been having a relationship with Jeffrey Dampier for years, so there had to have been some type of feelings there.
When detectives questioned Trey Jackson, he proves a much tougher nut to crack.
He was very nonchalant about the whole thing and wanted to know why he was being arrested, and I tried to explain to him that we were investigating Jeffrey being murdered.
Complain about what? I don't know, man.
Trey, you don't want to play that card.
He tells them that he don't know what happened, he don't know about a murder, he don't know nothing.
He says that he was aware that Victoria had invited Jeffrey over to the apartment, so that he decided to leave and go play basketball.
We obviously knew he was not being honest with us.
His mindset was not to be cooperative.
Detective Morgan thought of an idea to bring Victoria into the room to see if he would come off his story.
It's a common law enforcement technique to let one person know that, the gig is up and your counterpart has already told us what happened, so now it's your chance to get your side out there. And a lot of times people who commit crimes together believe that they have a pact that they're not gonna snitch or they're not gonna talk to law enforcement. And certainly people that are in a relationship with each other tend to think that that bond is stronger and can't be broken by law enforcement. That's not always the case.
We brought her and she was sitting there crying and looked at him and told him that it was over. I told him everything.
Trey, just tell me.
Trey Jackson has refused to admit playing any role in the murder of millionaire lottery winner Jeffrey Dampier. But detectives have one more card to play: his girlfriend and confessed accomplice, Victoria Jackson.
They got Victoria and brought her in to speak to him. And essentially when Victoria came in, she basically told Trey, listen, they know everything.
The exchange between the two of them, obviously it changed. It changed everything.
Trey has an emotional reaction as well. He starts to cry and tells the detectives, listen, I feel bad about what happened and I'm ready to tell you what happened.
Trey gave us the exact same story that Victoria did.
Identical in all but one detail.
Trey claims that the shooting was entirely accidental, that Victoria had the gun on Jeffrey, and the gun went off when the van went over a bump.
Detectives don't buy it for a minute.
I think the intent was to kill Jeffrey. He wanted him out of the picture so he could have Vicky to himself.
Despite Trey's insistence that the shooting was an accident, and Victoria's claim that she'd been coerced into pulling the trigger, their confessions are more than enough to charge both with murder and kidnapping.
I pretty much was relieved. They took away something really, really important. Somebody that was special in my life, in my children's life.
Charging Victoria's sister Terry, however, proves more complicated.
We know she was a principal in this matter based on statements from Victoria and Trey. However, we can't use defendant's statements against Terry in the state of Florida as evidence.
Without those statements, there's little to connect Terry to the crime.
We don't have any physical evidence to disprove beyond a reasonable doubt that Terry was actively involved in this outside of the words of Vicky.
There's plenty that implicates Trey and Victoria, though.
When they were arrested, Trey had money that had blood on it.
That came back to the DNA profile of Jeffrey Dampier.
The clothing that Victoria was wearing when this crime occurred. Jeffrey's blood was on her shorts.
Prosecutors also have the murder weapon.
Comparing the ballistics on the gun to the bullet recovered from Jeffrey, it was the firearm that had fired the bullet.
Which leads prosecutors to make a difficult decision.
Terry Jackson was not charged in this crime.
There's no physical evidence that's tying her to prosecute her for the crime of murder.
Sometimes it's a necessary calculation to make someone that doesn't have 100% clean hands a witness instead of a defendant.
When her sister Victoria goes on trial, the prosecution calls Terry to testify.
Terry's the only one that was in that van besides Victoria and Trey.
She testified against Victoria and against Trey during the trial and never implicated herself in the process.
Though Terry's testimony spells out just how the murder went down, she tries to explain to the court that her little sister was coerced into participating in the crime.
She's trying to minimize Victoria's role, but we expect that from her because that's her sister. That doesn't discount the fact that, or at least the state is saying, we don't believe that part. We believe that she knew what she was doing.
However, Terry's testimony can't overcome one crucial fact that all three people in the van that night agree on.
Victoria is the one who pulled the trigger.
When it's the defense's turn, they double down on the theory that Victoria was a puppet, not the perpetrator.
Her defense really was a duress defense. Victoria was trying to essentially blame everything on Trey.
The jury disagrees.
She was convicted of murder in the first degree.
It's an automatic life sentence in the state of Florida.
When Trey Jackson stands trial 6 months later, his attorneys flip the script and blame Victoria for Jeffrey's murder.
Trey's defense strategy was basically to argue that while he was involved in the robbery, he really didn't have any involvement with the actual murder itself.
Their point was she's the one who killed him. He's not the bad guy.
Once again, the argument falls flat.
If you are involved in a crime with another person and somebody dies as a result of that, you are just as culpable, just as guilty as they are. Even though Trey's defense strategy was to say, well, he was just involved in the murder, under the felony murder rule, he would just be just as guilty of the murder as Victoria was, even though he didn't actually pull the trigger.
He was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison.
However, the outcome brings little comfort to those who knew and loved Jeffrey Dampier.
He did have a relationship with that girl. You know, forgive me, I said it. He created that situation and it cost him his life.
Jeffrey won the lottery and decided to have an extramarital affair with a woman who was dating shady people.
Though Jeffrey's story is a cautionary tale, he leaves behind children who try to focus on the love their father gave to his family and friends.
Jeffrey was a really great guy. He was an awesome father. We still sit on his birthday. We all go to his favorite restaurant. That's our little tradition. We always put, post a picture saying, "Happy birthday, Dad." And that's how well, you missed and you are well loved.
Jeffrey may have made a few mistakes along the way, but there's no denying that he tried to help people and he loved his family.